Hello everybody and welcome to a new set of video lectures. In this occasion we're going to talk about exploratory data analysis, or EDA for short. EDA is very useful when we have our first contact with the dataset, for example to check that there are no errors or that everything looks like how it's supposed to look. From there, EDA is going to allow us to better approach data summarization, visualizations, or looking for relationships, patterns, and that kind of thing. So this is going to help us first and foremost to better understand the data, better understand that what we are studying in the first place, whatever it is, and ultimately gain new insights that are going to lead us to perhaps formulate new hypotheses. Those are going to be sensible, well-informed now through the use of EDA. And this could lead to collecting new data, different data, or maybe designing a new research study altogether. So let's take a look. So within the grand scheme of the course, we're going to be talking about exploring data. And that means transforming, visualizing everything that in the end is going to lead us to better understanding it, gaining new insights about it. And so in this block on EDA, we're going to talk about questions, what kind of questions we can answer with EDA and how it's going to allow us to get even better questions. And then we'll go through different settings. Do we want to look into one variable, two variables, maybe more variables? Are they categorical, numerical, combinations, etc.? Finally, we're going to take a look at how to transform data to get an even better impression of what really is going on in the data. And finally, talk about what happens when we have missing data. What does it mean? What do we do about it? What happens if we have many atypical values or many typical values? What do we do with that? So EDA is going to allow us again to get a better understanding of the data. And that is going to allow us to first generate questions, sensible, meaningful questions. Maybe sometimes we already have some research question in mind, and then by looking at the data, we're going to be able to provide an initial answer to it. Maybe just by looking at the data, we generate new research questions because we see something that might be going on, and then we want to further study that possible relationship. And in any case, EDA is going to allow us to at least refine the questions. And that is a very important step in analyzing data because very often from the beginning, we don't really know what is it that we're looking for, what kind of relationships we're looking for. And so through EDA, we're going to be able to refine, formulate even better questions based on what we find. And so we're going to do all this by means of summary statistics, different summarizations, visualizations, transformations of the data, and as we will see later in the course, through modeling, we can also do these things. We will talk about it when we see regression. And so EDA is going to be useful, especially with preliminary data, as a basis to decide what hypothesis is it that we're going to test in subsequent studies. So it's going to allow us to take a look at some initial data that we gather maybe from some pilot study, things like that. And then based on what we find, we go for the final study in which we study specific hypotheses. And it's also going to be very important if these hypotheses are already set for us and we're just giving some data and we have to start analyzing to kind of provide an answer to those questions. Because it's important to understand what's going on, and it's important to check that there's nothing weird going on in the data. Sometimes we're going to see that what we think there is a certain relationship that we think there is between two variables, actually it's not what it seems at first sight. If we look a little bit deeper into the data, it looks like there's something else or there is something different going on. And so EDA, it's not a strict set of guidelines that you just follow and that's it. It's rather a state of mind. It's exploratory. It's always about trying to find something new in the data, what the data can tell you. And it's about looking at patterns, relationships, everything that is unexpected in the data, things like that. And so the kinds of questions we're going to ask are, do we have missing data? Why? What does it mean? What kind of distributions do we have? So what do the numbers look like? What do the categories look like? Things like that. What is the central tendency? So are they values, the variables tend to concentrate around a certain value, or do they tend to disperse a lot and they are all over the place? What about typical and atypical data? What do they mean? And are there relationships, patterns? Can we compare variables across, for example, different groups? And as we said, everything depends on the variables we explore. So for example, it depends on whether they are categorical or numerical. Categorical variable is something like the country, from Spain, the Netherlands, France, Italy. Those are things that don't have a specific order. We don't assign numbers to them because numbers are completely meaningless. They're arbitrary. And then numerical quantities like, for example, time, distance, length, weight, things like that. And ultimately, it will depend on whether we want to look at only one variable, two variables, three variables, etc., etc.